The night was heavy with tension as a team of 8 Navy SEALs crouched in the shadow of a jagged rock formation deep in the mountains of eastern Syria. The mission had been straightforward on paper. Infiltrate a fortified insurgent compound, rescue 2 captured CIA operatives, and extract before sunrise. But missions never went according to plan, and this one had gone straight to hell the moment their air cover went silent. Lieutenant Commander Marcus Hale, the team leader, pressed his back against the cold rock and tried to steady his breathing as gunfire echoed through the valley below. Their communications with the AWACS had been crystal clear when they inserted from the Black Hawk 3 hours earlier, but now there was nothing but static. That meant no close air support, no overhead surveillance, and no way to call for extraction. They were cut off and alone, surrounded by hostile forces that seemed to multiply by the minute. "We move now," Marcus whispered through his throat mic, his voice low but carrying the weight of command. "We'll never make it if we stay pinned here." His second-in-command, Chief Petty Officer Ryan Cole, glanced at him with wide eyes. "Sir, we don't even know where they're coming from. They've got the high ground and we've got—" A burst of automatic fire cut him off, rounds sparking against the rocks inches above their heads. Marcus cursed under his breath and signaled for suppressive fire. 2 SEALs leaned out and unleashed short, controlled bursts from their suppressed 416 Hong Kong dollars rifles, forcing the enemy to duck back behind cover. In the brief lull, Marcus led the team in a crouched sprint toward a cluster of burned-out vehicles about 50 yards away. They slid into cover just as an RPG slammed into the rocks they had vacated, the explosion sending a shower of debris raining down on them. The concussion rattled Marcus's teeth, but he forced himself to stay focused. His mission wasn't over. "We need air support," Ryan growled, his face streaked with dirt and sweat. "If we don't get a bird overhead in the next 10 minutes, we're toast." Marcus keyed his mic again, praying for a miracle. "Overlord, this is Viper 1. We are engaged, heavy contact, grid reference Delta 94. Request immediate CS, danger close." The only response was static. Ryan slammed a fist into the rusted hood of the car they were hiding behind. "Damn it. They must have taken out the AWACS." Marcus didn't answer. His mind was already racing, calculating their dwindling options. Without air cover, they couldn't fight their way through the enemy lines. They would be slaughtered before they reached the extraction point. That left one option: hold their ground and pray someone somewhere was still listening. The enemy pressed their attack, moving in with chilling precision. These weren't just random insurgents. They were well-trained, well-equipped, and utterly determined to wipe the SEALs off the map. Tracer rounds stitched the night sky as the SEALs returned fire, every shot measured and deadly. But their ammo was running low, and Marcus knew it was only a matter of time before they were overrun. Then out of the darkness, a new sound rose, a deep, thrumming roar that didn't belong to any helicopter or ground vehicle. Marcus's head snapped up, his heart hammering in his chest. He knew that sound, though he hadn't heard it in years. A jet. But not just any jet. This was something quieter, sleeker, almost ghost-like. The enemy fighters heard it too. Their gunfire faltered as they craned their necks skyward, confusion rippling through their ranks. Marcus risked a glance over the hood of the vehicle and caught a glimpse of movement high above the valley, a dark shape slicing through the night at impossible speed. At first he thought he was imagining it. Stealth aircraft were rarely deployed for ground support missions like this, especially one this deep behind enemy lines. But as the shape grew larger, descending rapidly toward the battlefield, his disbelief turned to awe. "You've got to be kidding me," Ryan breathed, following Marcus's gaze. The jet was nearly invisible against the starless sky, its angular frame absorbing the faint moonlight. It moved with a predator's grace, silent until it wanted to be heard. Then, with a sudden burst of power, it roared into a steep dive, twin engines screaming like banshees. Marcus grabbed his radio, yelling into the mic, "Identify yourself. Friendly aircraft, confirm call sign." This time the static gave way to a calm, confident voice. "Viper 1, this is Ghost Rider. We've got eyes on you. Hold position and mark targets with IR strobes." Marcus didn't even hesitate. He signaled his men, and they activated their infrared markers, painting the enemy positions in the valley below. The jet banked sharply, lining up its attack run. A heartbeat later, the night exploded in fire and thunder. Precision-guided munitions slammed into the enemy forces, tearing through their ranks with surgical accuracy. The ground shook violently and a shockwave rolled over the SEALs, rattling their bones. Enemy fighters screamed in panic, some fleeing, others cut down where they stood. Marcus felt a savage grin spread across his face. For the first time all night, the tide had turned. Hell yeah. Ryan shouted over the chaos, pumping his fist in the air. "Light him up, Ghost Rider." The stealth jet swooped low, barely skimming the treetops as it unleashed another barrage of firepower. It was like watching a phantom rain death from the heavens. The enemy had no idea where to run or hide. Every move they made was anticipated and countered with terrifying precision. Marcus's respect for the unseen pilot grew with each pass. Whoever they weren't just good, they were legendary. But the SEALs' fight wasn't over yet. Through the smoke and flames, Marcus spotted a group of enemy combatants retreating toward a fortified bunker at the edge of the compound. He knew instinctively that this was where the captured CIA operatives were being held. If those hostages were moved, or executed, the mission would still be a failure no matter how many enemies they killed. "Ryan, take 3 men and flank right. I'll take the rest and push straight up the middle. Ghost Rider will cover us," Marcus barked, his voice sharp and commanding. Ryan nodded without hesitation, rallying his squad mates. As the SEALs moved out, Ghost Rider's voice came through the radio again, calm amid the storm. "Viper 1, you've got 2 minutes before I'm Winchester. Make it count." Marcus didn't need to ask what that meant. Winchester was pilot slang for out of ammo. After that, they'd be on their own again. His pulse surged with adrenaline as he charged forward, weaving through burning wreckage and bodies. The enemy tried to regroup, but the SEALs cut them down with ruthless efficiency, their training and teamwork honed to a razor's edge. Above them, Ghost Rider made one final pass, dropping a pair of bombs that obliterated a machine gun nest blocking the SEALs' advance. The path to the bunker was clear, but time was running out. Marcus sprinted the last 50 yards, kicking open the bunker door with a booted foot. Inside, 2 terrified CIA operatives were shackled to a metal table, their faces bruised and bloodied. "We're here to get you out," Marcus shouted, slicing through their restraints with his combat knife. As he hauled one operative to his feet, a massive explosion rocked the entire compound. Dust and debris rained down from the ceiling, and Marcus realized with dawning horror that the enemy wasn't retreating. They were preparing to bring the whole place down on top of them. "Move, move, move," he roared, shoving the operatives toward the exit. Outside, Ryan and his team were already engaged in a desperate firefight, holding off the last wave of attackers. Ghost Rider's voice crackled through the radio one final time, strained but steady. "Viper 1, this is Ghost Rider. You're on your own now. Good hunting." Then the sky went silent again, leaving only the chaos of battle and the grim determination of men who refused to die. Marcus gritted his teeth, rallying his team for one final push. They had the hostages. They had a chance. And as long as they kept fighting, they weren't beaten yet. Bullets tore through the night as Marcus shoved the rescued operatives ahead of him, his heart hammering like a war drum. Ryan and his fire team were spread thin, trading fire with the last of the insurgents while the rest of the compound erupted in chaos. The enemy, realizing their plans were unraveling, had gone feral, charging from every angle in a last-ditch effort to stop the SEALs. Marcus ducked behind a shattered concrete barrier, returning fire with precise bursts. The rescued operatives stumbled, terrified and disoriented, but Marcus had no time to comfort them. "Ryan's status?" he barked into his mic, his voice barely audible over the cacophony. "Pinned down." Ryan yelled back, his breath ragged. "We've got multiple hostiles advancing from the east. Ammo's low, we're running dry here." Marcus cursed under his breath. Ghost Rider had bought them precious minutes, but without the jet overhead, they were back to being hopelessly outnumbered. He scanned the burning compound, his mind racing. The extraction point was nearly half a mile away, over open terrain, and their Black Hawk was scheduled to land in less than 10 minutes. If they didn't make it there, they'd be trapped with no way out. "Cole, lay down a smoke screen now," Marcus ordered. Ryan didn't hesitate. He grabbed 2 smoke grenades from his vest, yanked the pins and hurled them into the open yard ahead. Thick plumes of white smoke erupted, blanketing the area in a choking haze. Under its cover, Marcus signaled for his men to move, leading the operatives through the swirling fog. The enemy opened fire blindly, their muzzle flashes lighting up the smoke like hellfire, but the SEALs moved like ghosts, silent and lethal. One insurgent stumbled into their path, coughing from the smoke, and Marcus dropped him with a single suppressed shot before he could raise the alarm. They emerged from the haze on the far side of the compound, gasping for clean air. For a brief moment, the night seemed eerily quiet, the distant crackle of flames the only sound. Then, as if on cue, the silence shattered. A massive explosion erupted behind them, sending a shockwave that knocked Marcus to his knees. He twisted around to see the compound engulfed in a towering fireball. The enemy had detonated their ammo stores, creating a fiery barrier between the SEALs and their pursuers. It was a temporary reprieve, but Marcus knew better than to celebrate. "Move. That blast will only slow them down," he shouted, hauling one of the operatives to his feet. The team sprinted through the rugged terrain, their boots pounding against the rocky soil. The extraction point was close, but the terrain offered little cover, and Marcus knew the enemy would be hot on their heels. As they crested a low ridge, tracer rounds suddenly streaked past them, forcing the team to dive for cover. Ryan swore loudly. "Snipers." 3 o'clock. Marcus scanned the darkness, his night vision goggles flickering as he searched for the source of the fire. He spotted the faint glint of a rifle scope perched atop a distant outcropping. Without hesitation he lined up his shot and squeezed the trigger. The enemy sniper dropped instantly, tumbling down the rocks. But there were more. Ryan and 2 other SEALs engaged the remaining shooters, their suppressed rifles cracking in rapid succession. Marcus knew they couldn't afford to get bogged down here. Every second they spent under fire was a second closer to disaster. "Cover me," he shouted. Ryan and the others unleashed a volley of suppressive fire, giving Marcus the opening he needed. He bolted forward, dragging the operatives with him. Behind him, the rest of the team fell back in a practiced leapfrog maneuver, covering each other as they advanced. Just as the extraction point came into view, a small clearing marked by a strobe beacon, the distant thump of helicopter rotors reached Marcus's ears. Relief surged through him, but it was short-lived. A burst of anti-aircraft fire erupted from the treeline, stitching the sky with deadly orange tracers. The Black Hawk veered violently, banking hard to avoid the incoming fire. Over the radio, the pilot's voice crackled with panic. "Viper 1, we're taking heavy fire. We can't land until you take out that AA gun." Marcus's stomach sank. Taking out an anti-aircraft gun with their dwindling ammo was a near-suicidal task, but they had no choice. If the bird couldn't land, they weren't leaving this valley alive. "Ryan, take charge of the hostages and hold this position," Marcus ordered. "I'm taking Alpha Team to hit that gun." Ryan's eyes widened in protest. "Marcus, you'll never make it in time. There's at least 20 tangos guarding that position." Marcus's voice was steel. "We don't have time to argue. Hold the LZ or die trying." With that, he led 4 of his men into the darkness, moving low and fast toward the source of the anti-aircraft fire. The enemy position was heavily fortified, sandbags and camouflaged netting blending seamlessly with the terrain. Marcus and his men crept closer, using the terrain for cover. When they were within striking distance, Marcus signaled for a coordinated assault. 2 SEALs lobbed flashbangs into the enemy encampment, the deafening blasts disorienting the insurgents. Marcus and the others stormed in immediately after, their rifles spitting death. The fight was brutal and up close, knives flashing in the darkness when rifles ran dry. Marcus drove his blade into the chest of an enemy fighter, then spun to take down another with a precise double tap. Within minutes, the enemy force was annihilated. Marcus turned his attention to the anti-aircraft gun, a massive Soviet-era weapon bristling with barrels. Working quickly, he rigged a block of C4 to its base and set the timer for 30 seconds. "Guns down," he radioed. "Bird, you are clear to land. But you better make it fast." They sprinted away just as the C4 detonated, the explosion lighting up the night like a second sunrise. Back at the landing zone, Ryan and his team were fighting desperately to hold off the enemy's final assault. The operatives were huddled in the center of the clearing, terrified but alive. As Marcus and his men rejoined the fray, the Black Hawk swooped in low, its door gunners unleashing torrents of lead into the advancing enemy ranks. The SEALs moved in perfect synchronization, providing covering fire as they loaded the hostages onto the helicopter. Marcus was the last to board, firing one final burst before leaping inside. The bird lifted off just as enemy reinforcements flooded into the clearing, their furious shouts drowned out by the roar of the rotors. As they gained altitude, Marcus slumped against the cabin wall, his body trembling with exhaustion. Ryan sat across from him, blood streaking his face but his grin fierce. "We made it," he panted. Marcus managed a weary nod, but his mind was already turning over the events of the night. Ghost Rider had saved them, but the mysterious pilot's identity remained a mystery. "Did anyone get a visual on that jet?" Marcus asked, his voice low. Ryan shook his head. "Not a chance. Thing came out of nowhere and vanished just as fast. Whoever that was, they weren't standard Air Force." Marcus stared out the open door at the dark horizon, his gut churning with unease. Someone had sent that jet to save them, but why? And what did it mean for the mission they had just barely survived? As the Black Hawk sped toward friendly territory, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that their fight was far from over. Somewhere out there, Ghost Rider was watching, and whatever game they were playing was only just beginning. The Black Hawk thundered low over the rugged terrain, its rotors chopping the night air as the SEALs sat in grim silence. The rescued CIA operatives were slumped against the bulkhead, still shaking from the ordeal, while the team checked weapons and patched wounds in the dim red cabin light. Marcus sat near the open door, his eyes scanning the darkness below. He should have been relieved. The mission had succeeded, against impossible odds. But instead, a gnawing unease coiled in his gut. Ghost Rider's sudden appearance had turned the tide of battle, but the pilot had vanished as abruptly as they'd arrived, leaving more questions than answers. Marcus replayed the events in his mind, searching for clues. The aircraft's silhouette hadn't matched any known U.S. platform. It had moved with unnatural speed and precision, almost like a living thing. Whoever had sent it hadn't announced themselves to the chain of command, and that alone was enough to set off alarm bells. Ryan, seated across from Marcus, broke the silence. "You're thinking about the jet, aren't you?" His voice was hoarse, edged with exhaustion. Marcus gave a terse nod. "You ever seen anything like that before?" Ryan shook his head slowly. "Hell no. That wasn't any raptor or lightning I've ever seen. The way it moved, like it knew exactly where to be every second. And the timing? Too perfect." Marcus's jaw tightened. "Exactly. Someone was watching us, Ryan. Someone who knew where we'd be and when. But they didn't want us to know they were there." Ryan's brows furrowed. "You think Ghost Rider was one of ours? Maybe some black project the brass isn't talking about?" Marcus didn't answer. His gut told him this was bigger than that. The SEALs weren't the only players in this game. As the helicopter neared the forward operating base, Marcus forced himself to push the questions aside. There would be time to dig for answers later. For now they had to debrief and get the hostages to safety. The bird touched down in a swirl of dust, and medics rushed forward to take the operatives. Marcus and his men disembarked, their boots hitting the tarmac with heavy thuds. Commander Briggs, their handler, strode up to meet them. His face was a mask of restrained fury. "Hale, what the hell happened out there?" Marcus snapped to attention, his voice clipped. "Mission accomplished, sir. Hostages secured. Enemy compound neutralized. We sustained minor injuries but no fatalities." Briggs's eyes narrowed. "And our air support?" "We lost contact with the AWACS 30 minutes after you went in. Satellite feed went dark too." "What the hell were you doing without cover?" Marcus hesitated, then decided to push. "We weren't completely alone, sir. Someone sent in an aircraft. A stealth platform unlike anything I've seen. Call sign Ghost Rider." Briggs's expression shifted from anger to confusion. "Ghost Rider? That's not in our roster." Marcus studied his face, searching for any hint of deception, but Briggs seemed genuinely baffled. "Sir, this jet came out of nowhere, obliterated the enemy forces, then disappeared. Without it, we wouldn't have made it out." Briggs rubbed his temples, clearly rattled. "I'll take this up the chain, but keep your mouth shut about it for now. No reports, no chatter, understood? Last thing we need is rumors flying around about mystery jets." Marcus's unease deepened. "With respect, sir, someone already knows. Ghost Rider had intel on our exact position. That means there's a leak or someone is running operations outside the chain of command." Briggs's tone hardened. "I said drop it, Lieutenant Commander. You've done your job. Get your men cleaned up and ready for redeployment." Marcus saluted stiffly, but inside, his anger simmered. Briggs was hiding something, whether intentionally or not. Ryan fell into step beside Marcus as they headed toward the barracks. "You believe him?" Ryan asked quietly. Marcus shook his head. "No. And I don't think we were meant to survive tonight. If Ghost Rider hadn't shown up, we'd be dead. That means someone wanted this mission to fail, and someone else didn't." Ryan's face darkened. "So what now?" Marcus lowered his voice. "Now we find out who Ghost Rider is and why they saved us." Hours later, Marcus sat alone in the dimly lit command tent, poring over mission data on a secure terminal. The feed from the AWACS was corrupted, static-riddled, but he caught brief glimpses of heat signatures moving in impossible patterns. The jet had been moving at Mach speeds while pulling maneuvers no human pilot could survive. It wasn't just advanced, it was otherworldly. As he studied the grainy footage, a shadow fell across the screen. Marcus spun, his hand instinctively going to his sidearm, but relaxed when he saw Ryan. "You scared the hell out of me," Marcus muttered. Ryan smirked humorlessly. "You're jumpy. Find anything? Marcus pointed to a blurry frame frozen on the screen. It showed the silhouette of the jet mid-dive, its angular shape like nothing in the current arsenal. That's Ghost Rider. Whatever this thing is, it's not supposed to exist. Ryan whistled softly. You think it's some kind of drone? Marcus shook his head. No. The voice on comms was human. Calm, confident. Whoever they are, they're damn good. Ryan crossed his arms. So what's the plan? We can't exactly put out a bolo on a ghost plane. Marcus leaned back, his mind working furiously. No. But we can follow the breadcrumbs. The enemy force we faced tonight wasn't local militia. Their weapons were too advanced, their tactics too precise. Someone supplied them, and maybe the same someone knows about Ghost Rider. Before Ryan could respond, an alarm blared through the base. Marcus and Ryan bolted outside to see a plume of smoke rising from the north perimeter. Chaos erupted as soldiers scrambled to defensive positions. A Humvee screeched to a halt beside them, and a young private shouted over the din, "We're under attack. Enemy mortars hitting the fuel depot." Marcus's blood ran cold. The enemy shouldn't have been able to find the base so quickly, not unless someone on the inside had given them coordinates. He grabbed Ryan's shoulder. This isn't random. They're coming for us. For the hostages. We need to move now. Together, they raced toward the command center, where Briggs was barking orders into a radio. His face was pale with fear. They're after the operatives, Marcus said, cutting through the noise. We need to secure them before the enemy breaches the perimeter. Briggs hesitated, then nodded reluctantly. Take your team. Get them to the safe house on the south ridge. I'll coordinate the defense. Marcus didn't waste another second. He sprinted to the barracks, rallying his men. The operatives were already being hustled out by medics, wide-eyed and terrified. As they loaded into a convoy of Humvees, Ryan leaned close to Marcus. You think Ghost Rider's gonna show up again? Marcus clenched his jaw. I don't know. But we sure as hell can't count on it. The convoy roared out of the base, engines straining as they barreled through the darkness. Behind them, explosions lit up the night sky as the base came under full assault. Marcus's gut twisted. This wasn't just a rescue mission anymore. It was a war, and Ghost Rider was at the center of it. As they sped toward the unknown, he swore silently that he would uncover the truth, no matter the cost. Somewhere above them, in the silent void of the night sky, he couldn't shake the feeling that Ghost Rider was watching, waiting for the perfect moment to strike again. The world dissolved into chaos as the convoy tore through the narrow mountain pass, headlights off, engines roaring in unison, the darkness broken only by the pale glow of the moon overhead. Marcus sat in the lead Humvee, his rifle balanced across his lap, eyes scanning the jagged cliffs that rose on either side of the dirt road. Every nerve in his body was taut, every sense screaming danger. The attack on the base hadn't been random. Someone inside had leaked their location, and now the enemy was hunting them like wolves. Behind Marcus, the rescued CIA operatives huddled together, pale and silent, their faces streaked with grime and fear. Ryan's voice crackled over the radio. 2 miles to the safe house. So far, no tail. Marcus didn't relax. Don't count on it. They know our route. Keep your eyes sharp. He leaned forward, speaking to the driver in a low, urgent tone. Push it. If we get caught in this pass, we're done. The driver nodded grimly, pressing harder on the accelerator. The Humvee jolted over a cluster of rocks, sending Marcus's teeth rattling. He gritted his jaw, forcing himself to focus. The enemy had already proven they were steps ahead. There was no reason to believe they'd stop now. A sudden burst of static tore through the radio, followed by a chilling silence. Ryan's voice vanished mid-sentence. Marcus's blood ran cold. Ryan, say again, he barked. No response. Then the night exploded. Gunfire erupted from the cliffs above, muzzle flashes sparking like fireflies. The convoy was caught in a deadly crossfire. Bullets slammed into the lead Humvee's armor, shattering the windshield and tearing through the metal. The driver screamed, jerking the wheel as rounds punched into his chest. Marcus grabbed the wheel, hauling it back just in time to keep the vehicle from careening off the edge of the cliff. Ambush, he roared, his voice drowned out by the deafening roar of gunfire. The SEALs reacted instantly, pouring out of the vehicles and returning fire with ruthless precision. Marcus dragged the CIA operatives behind a boulder, shielding them with his body as he unleashed a burst from his 416 Hong Kong dollars. Ryan's voice finally cut through the chaos over the radio, ragged and breathless. We're hit bad. 2 vehicles down. Multiple tangos closing in. Marcus cursed. This was no simple ambush. The enemy had planned this perfectly, funneling them into a kill zone where escape was nearly impossible. "Hold your ground," Marcus shouted. "We fight our way out." Grenades arced through the air, detonating with earth-shaking force. Shrapnel tore through flesh and steel alike, the screams of wounded men mingling with the relentless rattle of gunfire. Marcus's team fought like demons, but the enemy was everywhere, swarming down the cliffs with terrifying precision. Through the smoke and carnage, Marcus spotted a shadow moving differently from the rest. A tall figure clad in advanced body armor, barking orders in a language Marcus didn't recognize. This wasn't just an enemy commander. This was the one pulling the strings. Marcus raised his rifle, lining up the shot, but before he could fire, a flash of movement caught his eye. The mysterious figure vanished into the darkness, slipping away like a ghost. "Ryan!" Marcus shouted. "They've got a leader out there. If we don't take him down, they'll keep coming." Ryan's response was a snarl of frustration. "We don't have the manpower to chase him. We're barely holding the line as it is." Marcus knew he was right, but the thought of letting that figure escape burned in his gut. He forced himself to focus on the immediate threat. Fall back to the ravine. Use the rocks for cover. The SEALs moved as one, dragging the wounded and the hostages through a narrow cut in the terrain. The enemy pressed hard, their fire relentless, but the SEALs' discipline and training allowed them to hold the line just long enough to reach temporary safety. Marcus crouched behind a jagged boulder, panting, sweat stinging his eyes. His ammo count was dangerously low, and the enemy wasn't giving them a moment to breathe. "We need extraction now," he shouted into his radio. "Overlord, this is Viper 1. Immediate evac, danger close." Static answered him. His stomach sank. The comms were dead again. It was just like the night Ghost Rider had appeared. Marcus's pulse quickened. If Ghost Rider was out there watching, now was the time to intervene. "Ghost Rider, if you can hear me," Marcus said, desperation creeping into his voice, "we need you. Now." For a long, terrible moment there was nothing. Then, faint and almost surreal, came the calm, measured voice he'd heard before. "Viper 1, this is Ghost Rider. I have you visual." Marcus's heart surged with hope. "Targets are dug in on the cliffs, multiple positions, heavy weapons. We're outnumbered 2-1. Ghost Rider's reply was simple. "Mark your positions. Stay low." Marcus yanked an IR strobe from his vest and activated it, tossing it into the open. His men did the same, marking their perimeter. A split second later, the night sky erupted. The same eerie, almost supernatural jet descended like a vengeful spirit, its engines whisper quiet until it unleashed hell. Precision-guided munitions rained down, carving the enemy ranks apart with surgical accuracy. The cliffs lit up like a volcanic eruption, enemy fighters screaming in terror as they were obliterated. The SEALs watched in stunned awe as Ghost Rider weaved through the sky, performing maneuvers that defied physics. Ryan's voice was hushed, almost reverent. "That's not human." Marcus didn't answer. He couldn't tear his eyes away. In less than a minute, the enemy force was in full retreat, scattering into the darkness. Ghost Rider banked low over the battlefield, then pulled up sharply, vanishing into the night as quickly as it had appeared. Marcus's radio crackled again. "You're clear for now. Move to secondary extraction point. Grid coordinates incoming." Marcus stared at the device, shocked. Whoever Ghost Rider was, they not only knew their situation but also had access to classified exfil locations. "Why are you helping us?" Marcus demanded. There was a pause, then a cryptic reply. "Because if you fall, we all fall. No more questions. Move." The line went dead. Ryan jogged up, his face a mix of fear and awe. "Marcus, we just got saved, again. You really think this Ghost Rider's on our side?" Marcus's gut twisted. "For now. But nobody gives that kind of firepower for free." They moved quickly, rallying the survivors and guiding the CIA operatives toward the new extraction point. As they ran, Marcus couldn't shake the image of the armored figure on the cliffs. Ghost Rider was powerful, yes, but there was someone else out there, someone who had nearly destroyed them. Without Ghost Rider's intervention. And Marcus knew with bone-deep certainty that their paths would cross again. The team reached a plateau overlooking a dry riverbed. A transport helicopter waited there, its rotors thundering. As the SEALs loaded the wounded and the operatives, Marcus lingered for a moment, scanning the horizon. Somewhere out in the darkness, Ghost Rider was watching. And somewhere else, the enemy leader was planning his next move. Marcus swore to himself that he'd find the truth, no matter how deep he had to dig or how many battles he had to fight. Because this war was no longer about just rescuing hostages. It was about survival. And the fate of everyone he cared about might depend on who reached the finish line first. The transport helicopter thundered through the pre-dawn sky, its interior thick with the smell of blood, sweat, and gun oil. Marcus sat near the open door, scanning the horizon with cold, vigilant eyes. Below them stretched a desolate expanse of desert, the jagged silhouettes of mountains just visible against the first light of dawn. His men were battered and silent, tending to the wounded or simply staring blankly into the void, their faces haunted by the ambush they had just survived. The rescued CIA operatives were huddled near the center of the cabin, pale and trembling, whispering in hushed voices that Marcus couldn't quite make out over the thrum of the rotors. Ryan leaned against the bulkhead opposite Marcus, clutching his rifle tightly even though the immediate danger had passed. He met Marcus's gaze, his expression grim. "You saw that guy tonight," Ryan said finally, his voice low. "The one giving the orders. Whoever he was, he wasn't just some warlord. That was military precision." Marcus nodded slowly. The memory of the armored figure haunted him, the way the man had moved through the chaos with calm authority, as if he had orchestrated every move on the battlefield. "He's not just an enemy leader," Marcus said, his tone hard. "He's the key. Ghost Rider may have saved us, but that man? He's the one behind all of this. We take him down, maybe we finally get some answers." Ryan frowned. "And what about Ghost Rider? Whoever they are, they've saved our asses twice now, but they know way too much. They had coordinates for a black site extraction point, Marcus. That's beyond top secret. That scares me more than the guy in the armor." Marcus didn't reply right away. His mind was a storm of conflicting thoughts. Ghost Rider had been their savior, but also a mystery wrapped in shadows. Friend or foe, Marcus couldn't afford to trust them blindly. "We'll deal with Ghost Rider when the time comes," he said finally. "Right now, our priority is getting these operatives somewhere safe and figuring out why we were sent into that hellhole without proper intel or support." The pilot's voice crackled over the intercom. "Viper 1, we're 5 minutes out from secondary base. Prepare for landing." Marcus stood, gripping an overhead strap as the helicopter banked sharply. Through the open door, he saw the base come into view, a small, heavily fortified outpost nestled between two rocky hills. It wasn't much, but it would buy them a little breathing room. The bird touched down hard, kicking up a storm of dust. Marcus and his men disembarked quickly, securing the perimeter as medics rushed forward to take the wounded and the CIA operatives. Briggs was waiting near the command tent, his face drawn and pale. The sight of him sent a flash of anger through Marcus's veins. He strode up to the commander, his voice like a whip. "You sent us into an ambush, sir. The enemy was dug in waiting for us. And now they're coming after our bases. I want to know how the hell they got our intel." Briggs raised his hands, his expression defensive. "We're still assessing the situation, Hale. The communications blackout wasn't planned. We lost the AWACS and satellite link at the worst possible time." Marcus stepped closer, his eyes blazing. "This wasn't just bad luck. Someone sold us out. And you need to figure out who before more men die." Briggs's gaze flickered, just for an instant, and Marcus caught it, a flash of something like guilt or fear. It was gone a second later, replaced by forced calm. "I'll handle it, Lieutenant Commander. Your job is to rest and get ready for redeployment." Marcus clenched his fists, barely restraining himself. He wanted to press harder, demand answers, but he knew Briggs wouldn't give him anything useful right now. He turned away, seething. Ryan fell into step beside him as they walked toward the barracks. "He's hiding something," Ryan muttered. Marcus nodded grimly. "Yeah. And I'm done playing nice. Tonight we start digging." Hours later, under the cover of darkness, Marcus and Ryan slipped into the command center. The base was quiet, most personnel asleep or on watch duty. Ryan kept an eye on the hallway while Marcus hacked into the secure terminal using a bypass code he'd learned years ago. Data flooded the screen: mission reports, satellite images, encrypted communications. Marcus's eyes scanned the files rapidly until one particular transmission caught his attention. It was a voice recording, heavily scrambled, but fragments were clear enough to make his blood run cold. A deep, commanding voice, unmistakably the same as the armored figure he'd seen during the ambush, was speaking in clipped English. "The operatives must be retrieved. Eliminate the SEALs if necessary. Ghost Rider must not interfere again." Marcus's heart pounded. This was proof. Their enemies not only knew about Ghost Rider but considered them a direct threat. Worse, someone inside their own command structure had been communicating with the enemy leader. He downloaded the file onto a secure drive, his jaw tight. "We've got a mole," Marcus whispered. Ryan's face went pale. "And Briggs is covering for them." Suddenly, alarms blared throughout the base, red lights flashing. The loudspeaker crackled to life. "Base under attack. All personnel to defensive positions." Marcus and Ryan sprinted outside, the night erupting into chaos. Mortar shells rained down, explosions tearing through the perimeter defenses. Searchlights swung wildly, illuminating shadowy figures advancing from the hills. The enemy had found them again, and this time they were better equipped. Marcus grabbed a fallen soldier's radio. "This is Viper 1. All SEALs to the east wall now. We need to hold the line until evac arrives." His men converged on the eastern defenses, opening fire as enemy troops swarmed forward. The attackers moved with frightening coordination, their weapons sleek and advanced. These weren't ordinary insurgents. They were something far deadlier. Marcus fought like a man possessed, his rifle bucking against his shoulder as he cut down target after target. But for every enemy he dropped, two more seemed to take their place. Ryan appeared at his side, blood streaming from a cut on his forehead. "We can't hold them, Marcus. We need air support." Marcus's mind went to Ghost Rider. He raised his radio, shouting into it over the din of battle. "Ghost Rider, this is Viper 1. If you're out there, we need you now." Static answered him. His heart sank. Without Ghost Rider, they were dead men. Then, faint and distant, came the familiar, calm voice. "Viper 1, copy. Hold your ground." Marcus's breath caught. "We're surrounded. Heavy armor incoming. We can't hold much longer." Ghost Rider's tone didn't waver. "I'm en route. 30 seconds." The SEALs dug in, fighting with everything they had as enemy armored vehicles crested the hill. Marcus's stomach twisted. Not even Ghost Rider could take out this many targets in time. Just as the first enemy tank fired, the night sky split open with a scream of engines. Ghost Rider's jet appeared like a phantom, diving straight into the heart of the enemy formation. Missiles streaked from its wings, striking with pinpoint accuracy. Tanks erupted in balls of fire, enemy troops scattering in panic. The SEALs roared in triumph, their morale surging as Ghost Rider performed impossible maneuvers, weaving through the chaos like a deadly wraith. Ryan's voice was awed. "Every time I see it, I believe in miracles." Marcus didn't answer. His focus was on the battle, and on the knowledge that someone inside their command had orchestrated all of this. When the last enemy fighter fell, Ghost Rider circled once, then spoke over the radio. "You have a traitor among you. Find them, or next time I won't be there to save you." Marcus's blood went cold. Before he could respond, the jet shot upward into the clouds and vanished, leaving only silence and smoldering wreckage behind. Marcus turned to Ryan, his face grim. "We don't just have a mole. We have a war inside our own ranks. And now it's personal." The base lay in ruins, fire still smoldering from the assault as medics moved frantically among the wreckage, tending to the wounded. The stench of smoke, burning fuel, and blood hung heavy in the air. Marcus stood amid the devastation, his chest heaving, sweat and grime streaking his face. His SEAL team was scattered, exhausted but alive thanks to Ghost Rider's last-minute intervention. The enemy attack had been precise, relentless, and coordinated, proof that someone inside their command structure had been feeding intel to the enemy leader. Marcus's jaw tightened as he watched Briggs barking orders at the remaining personnel, his face pale under the harsh floodlights. Something about the commander's frantic movements screamed guilt to Marcus. Ryan approached from behind, his rifle slung over his shoulder, his eyes bloodshot from lack of sleep. "We need to confront him now," Ryan said, his voice a low growl. "Before he finds a way to spin this and bury the truth." Marcus shook his head slightly, scanning the area for eavesdroppers. "Not yet. If we move too soon without hard proof, he'll flip the narrative and paint us as the problem. We need to catch him in the act." Ryan scowled. "And how do you plan to do that? The mole's already one step ahead of us. They knew our exact location tonight." Marcus pulled a small data drive from his pocket, the one he'd stolen from the command terminal before the attack. "We have a piece of the puzzle. Ghost Rider warned us for a reason. Whoever the enemy leader is, he's connected to Briggs. We just need to decode this before Briggs realizes what we've got." They retreated to a makeshift bunker on the far edge of the base, away from prying eyes. Inside, Marcus booted up a rugged laptop and plugged in the drive. Lines of encrypted code filled the screen. Ryan hovered behind him, muttering curses under his breath. "We need Ghost Rider for this," Ryan said finally. Marcus hesitated, his fingers pausing over the keyboard. He hated relying on a phantom ally they couldn't fully trust, but time was slipping away. "Get me a secure channel," Marcus ordered. Ryan scrambled to set up a field comm unit. Minutes later, Ghost Rider's calm, measured voice filled the bunker. "Viper 1. I assume you have something for me?" Marcus's voice was edged with steel. "We have evidence tying Briggs to the enemy leader. But the files are locked. If we can crack them, we'll know who's orchestrating these attacks." There was a pause, then Ghost Rider spoke again. "Upload the files to this frequency. I'll decrypt them, but you won't like what you find." Marcus didn't waste time. He sent the data and waited, tension coiled tight in his gut. Finally, Ghost Rider returned, his tone grim. "The enemy leader's codename is Revenant. Real name classified, but he was a former Black Ops commander, presumed dead years ago. The files show Briggs has been leaking mission intel directly to him. He's been setting you up to fail, eliminating threats to Revenant's operation while keeping his own hands clean." Ryan's face twisted with fury. That bastard sold out his own men. Ghost Rider's voice dropped lower. "It's worse than that. There's a scheduled extraction tonight. Revenant's forces are coming to pull Briggs out before you can act. If you don't stop him, you'll never see him again." Marcus's blood ran cold. "Give us the location." Ghost Rider rattled off coordinates. Marcus memorized them, then cut the transmission. He turned to Ryan, his expression deadly serious. "We move now. Just us. If Briggs catches wind of this, he'll vanish." They geared up quickly, loading magazines and checking weapons with silent efficiency. Marcus assembled a small strike team of only his most trusted SEALs, men who'd bled beside him and had no love for Briggs. Under the cover of darkness, they slipped out of the ruined base and made their way through the rugged terrain toward the coordinates. The night was eerily quiet, the kind of silence that pressed down on a man's chest like a physical weight. As they crested a ridge, Marcus froze, raising a hand. Below them, in a rocky canyon, floodlights illuminated a clandestine landing zone. Enemy troops were clustered around a camouflaged VTOL transport craft, its engines humming. And there, near the edge of the platform, stood Briggs, calm, composed, and speaking with a towering figure clad in advanced combat armor. Even from a distance, Marcus recognized Revenant. His pulse hammered in his ears. Ryan whispered, "That's him. That's the bastard who tried to wipe us out." Marcus nodded once, his voice barely audible. "We take Briggs alive. Revenant dies tonight." They moved like ghosts through the shadows, eliminating sentries with silent precision. Marcus's heart pounded as they closed in on the platform. Just as he raised his rifle to signal the attack, Revenant turned, his helmet swiveling toward them as if he'd sensed their presence. "Ambush." Revenant's voice boomed, amplified through external speakers. Chaos erupted. Enemy troops opened fire, tracer rounds streaking through the night. Marcus and his men dove for cover, returning fire in controlled bursts. Ryan took down 2 hostiles with surgical shots, while Marcus advanced relentlessly, his focus locked on Revenant. The armored figure moved with terrifying speed, deflecting Marcus's shots with an energy shield and returning fire with a weapon far more advanced than anything the SEALs carried. "You should have stayed dead, Hale," Revenant taunted, his voice cold and mocking. "Just like your father." The words hit Marcus like a physical blow, but he didn't falter. "My father died a hero," he snarled, firing again. Revenant laughed, a harsh metallic sound. "Your father died because of me. And you will too." Ryan shouted, Marcus flanking left. Marcus rolled to the side just as a burst of plasma fire scorched the ground where he'd been standing. He rose to one knee and fired a grenade round directly at Revenant. The blast knocked the armored giant back a step, cracking his shield. "Now!" Marcus roared. His team concentrated their fire, hammering Revenant with everything they had. For a moment it seemed they might overwhelm him, but then the VTOL's engines roared to life and Briggs made a break for the ramp. Ryan sprinted after him, tackling him to the ground. The 2 men grappled violently, Briggs shouting, "You don't understand. He'll kill us all." Ryan slammed a fist into his jaw. "You already did." Revenant let out a furious roar and hurled a shockwave grenade, sending Marcus and his men sprawling. As Marcus struggled to rise, Revenant loomed over him, his armored gauntlet closing around Marcus's throat. "You are nothing compared to me," Revenant growled. Marcus gasped, his vision dimming, then a deafening sonic boom split the air. A black blur streaked overhead as Ghost Rider's stealth jet descended like an avenging specter. Missiles slammed into the platform, engulfing enemy troops in fire. Revenant released Marcus and turned, raising his shield just in time to block another barrage. Ghost Rider's voice crackled over Marcus's comm. "Finish this, Viper 1. Fueled by rage and adrenaline, Marcus surged to his feet and drove a combat knife into the weak point at Revenant's neck joint. Sparks flew as Revenant staggered back, bellowing in pain. Marcus ripped the knife free and fired point-blank into the exposed gap. The armored giant collapsed, his final words a garbled hiss. "This isn't over." The VTOL exploded in a massive fireball as Ghost Rider's missiles found their mark. Briggs, dazed and bloodied, lay in Ryan's grip, his betrayal plain for all to see. As enemy reinforcements fled into the darkness, Ghost Rider's jet hovered briefly overhead, then vanished into the clouds. Marcus stood over Revenant's smoking corpse, chest heaving, knowing the war was far from over. The battlefield was a smoldering ruin, littered with twisted metal, burning debris, and the bodies of Revenant's elite soldiers. The acrid stench of fuel and scorched earth filled Marcus's lungs as he stood amid the carnage, his chest heaving, every muscle screaming from the brutal fight. His men were spread out across the landing zone, some tending to the wounded, others securing weapons and equipment before enemy reinforcements could return. The night was eerily quiet now, broken only by the crackle of fires and the distant groan of the damaged VTOL wreckage. Briggs knelt in the dirt, his hands zip-tied behind his back, blood dripping from a gash on his forehead. Ryan stood over him, rifle trained on his former commanding officer, rage etched into every line of his face. Marcus stalked toward Briggs, his boots crunching over shattered armor plates, his eyes like cold steel. Briggs flinched under Marcus's glare but tried to summon some of his old authority. "You don't understand, Hale," he said, his voice hoarse. "Revenant wasn't just a man. He was part of something bigger, something that's been operating in the shadows for years. I didn't have a choice." Marcus's hand shot out, gripping Briggs by the collar and yanking him upright. "You had a choice," Marcus snarled, his voice low and lethal. "And you chose to sell out your own men, to feed intel to the enemy and get good people killed. You don't get to hide behind excuses." Briggs's eyes flickered with fear and defiance. "You think you've won? You killed one man, but Revenant's network spans continents. Ghost Rider, your mysterious savior, they're just another piece on the board. None of us are in control." Marcus shoved him back down, disgust twisting his gut. "Then we'll burn the whole board down, one piece at a time." Ghost Rider's voice crackled suddenly over Marcus's earpiece, calm and unhurried as ever. "Viper 1, enemy reinforcements are mobilizing from a nearby stronghold. You have 10 minutes before they converge on your position. Extraction is inbound, but you need to move now." Marcus scanned the horizon, spotting faint movement on the distant ridges, scouts, no doubt calling in their location. He activated his team's comms. "Viper team, pack it up. We're exfiltrating now. Ryan, you and 2 men drag Briggs to the evac point. No slip-ups. If he tries anything, drop him." Ryan nodded sharply, hauling Briggs to his feet. Briggs struggled, shouting, "You don't know what you're dealing with. Revenant's death changes nothing. The real power is still out there." Ryan slammed the butt of his rifle into Briggs's gut, silencing him. "You'll have plenty of time to talk in a prison cell," Ryan growled. The SEALs moved quickly through the canyon, sticking to the shadows as enemy searchlights swept across the landscape. Ghost Rider's jet roared overhead intermittently, striking enemy convoys and buying them precious minutes. Marcus felt a strange mixture of gratitude and unease every time the dark aircraft screamed past. Ghost Rider was their guardian angel tonight, but Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that they were being guided, manipulated toward some greater purpose. They reached the extraction point just as a massive transport helicopter descended from the night sky, its rotors chopping the air into a frenzy. The SEALs loaded up, Ryan shoving Briggs into a reinforced compartment at the rear. Marcus was the last aboard, firing a final burst at approaching enemy forces before leaping inside. "Go, go, go," he shouted to the pilot. The bird lifted off, banking hard as tracers streaked past its fuselage. Below them, Revenant's surviving troops scattered like ants, regrouping for another strike that would never come. Inside the helicopter, tension was thick. Briggs sat shackled and silent now, his eyes burning with a mixture of hatred and fear. Ryan wiped sweat and blood from his face, glancing at Marcus. "So what now? We hand Briggs over to command and hope someone listens? What if the rot goes deeper than him?" Marcus stared out the open hatch, watching the burning landing zone fade into the distance. "It does go deeper," he said quietly. "Revenant wasn't just a rogue commander. He was the tip of a spear aimed at us. Briggs was his handler inside our ranks, but someone higher up gave the orders. Ghost Rider knows more than they're telling us. Ryan frowned. You trust them? Marcus shook his head. No. But right now they're the only reason any of us are still breathing. The comms unit buzzed and Ghost Rider's voice filled the cabin. Viper 1, listen carefully. Revenant's death will create a power vacuum. His lieutenants will move to take control and the network will fracture. But that also makes them more dangerous. Briggs is valuable, alive he's leverage. Dead he's just a martyr. Protect him even if you don't want to. Marcus glared at Briggs, every fiber of his being screaming to put a bullet in the traitor's skull. But he knew Ghost Rider was right. We'll keep him breathing, Marcus said reluctantly. For now. But I want answers. Who the hell are you, Ghost Rider? Why are you helping us? There was a pause, then Ghost Rider replied, because I've seen what happens when men like Revenant win. And because this war didn't start with you, and it won't end here. The line went dead, leaving more questions than answers. The transport touched down at a classified black site facility hours later. Armed guards escorted Briggs away, his screams echoing down the sterile corridors as he was dragged into an interrogation chamber. Marcus and his men were debriefed, their wounds treated, their statements taken by stone-faced intelligence officers who offered no information in return. When the session ended, Marcus was summoned to a private room where an older man in a tailored suit waited. His presence radiated authority, his expression unreadable. Lieutenant Commander Hale, the man said smoothly, you've done your country a great service tonight. But what you uncovered is highly classified. The official report will state that Revenant was a rogue terrorist leader, and that's all the world will ever know. Marcus's jaw tightened. And Briggs? He sold us out. My men died because of him. You can't just bury this. The man's cold smile never faltered. Briggs will be handled. As for you and your team, you'll be reassigned. New identities, new missions. You'll continue to serve, quietly. This is bigger than revenge, Lieutenant Commander. It's about stability. Marcus took a step forward, his fists clenched. Stability built on lies isn't stability at all. It's rot. And one day it will collapse. The man's eyes hardened. Careful, Hale. Heroes are useful to the machine. Martyrs are not. Later in the barracks, Marcus gathered his team. Ryan looked at him expectantly. So, are we done? Or is this just the beginning? Marcus stared at the floor for a long moment, then met their eyes. Revenant's dead, but his network isn't. Ghost Rider warned us for a reason. We can't trust command and we can't walk away. If we do, more good people will die. This isn't over, not by a long shot. His men nodded grimly, their loyalty unshaken. Ryan clapped Marcus on the shoulder. Then we keep fighting. Together. As dawn broke, Marcus stood outside, watching the first rays of sunlight pierce the clouds. In the distance, a faint sonic boom echoed, a sign that Ghost Rider was still out there watching, waiting. Marcus didn't know who they were or what game they were playing, but he knew one thing for certain. The war had only just begun. He tightened his grip on his rifle, his resolve hardening like steel. Whatever lay ahead, he would face it head-on. Because for men like him, there was no finish line. Only the next mission, the next enemy, the next battle in the endless fight for survival. And somewhere out there, in the shadows, Ghost Rider was flying toward the storm, preparing for the war to come. The end.